Yeah, resilience can be an inborn quality if we choose to seek it and find it and nurture it.
Yes.
We're not born just naturally giving up.
Oh,
It is an inborn quality,
yeah.
but we sometimes lose it because the world knocks it out of us.
Learning to swim is about learning from others. Be the author of your own story, not a character in somebody else's story. Get inspired by others to take action. Learn how to set goals to exceed your own expectations. So often the answer that you are looking for is right in front of you. On Learning to Swim, we highlight those answers through storytelling. Okay, hello, and welcome to Carole Richardson, my guest today on Learning to Swim. Welcome, Carole.
Thank you.
I'm delighted to have you as our guest. So Learning to Swim, I think I had shared with you a little bit, is about really looking at our kind of bright spots and blind spots, and meaning like what are those things that are so kind of innate to us that we do without really recognizing them. And it can be, and sometimes blind spots are considered to be negative somehow, but I really see all of these things as kind of the two sides of the same coin, and that it is interesting as we move through the world and those things that we do so well that we may not fully recognize. So this is to explore that a little bit. I ask you to give some personal definitions around some different topics, and mostly it's you have not been pre-prepared for these questions. And the other thing that's kind of interesting for me about these is I drafted these questions over a year ago, which means that it was pre-COVID 2020, and so I find it kind of interesting when I go back to these. But first I want to let people know who you are, and you've got a lot. You are an intuitive life coach, energy healer, award-winning author, congratulations, and meditation teacher, amongst other things. You are currently working on a PhD in philosophy, cosmology, and consciousness. And that is, you're doing that work at the California Institute of Integral Studies. I believe that's in Northern California. Is that correct?
San
Francisco. Okay. And I do want to let folks know you've got many books. We mentioned that you had won an award for one of your books, which is Truth and Illusion: The Politics of Spirituality and How One Person's Lie is Another One's Truth. Sounds really interesting. It sounds like it always would be a good read. Also sounds very, very timely in this moment. And another one of your titles, Mornings with the Masters: Mystical Journeys in a Postmodern World. I may have misread that. Is it Morning with Masters or
Mornings with the Masters?
Mornings with the Masters. Thank you for correcting me. Well, let's jump right into it. We will have information about how to reach out to Carole, and also her books, FYI, are on Amazon in print and in Kindle. But as I said, let's jump in. And our first question for you is, what does resilience mean to you?
Wow. That's a great question, Kristan. Thank you. So resilience to me means having the energy and finding the positivity. We don't necessarily have the positivity. Sometimes we do, but finding the positivity and opening up to the energy through that mindset of positivity to be able to overcome hard times.
I love that definition. For me, it resonates right now so much because we are many months into the COVID pandemic, and it's pretty heavy as it goes on. And so just this idea of finding that positivity, or even maybe being open to is also maybe another way of saying it, is being open to kind of the possibility of positivity or positive things.
Yeah, so if I may respond with two comments to that.
Yeah.
One is the paper I'm working on right now. My thesis in this paper is that redemption is the underlying motive force of the universe. My paper is about two 20th century philosophers who wrote about spiritual evolution, not only of humanity, but Sri Aurobindo and Pierre Teilhard de Chardin both wrote about the spiritual evolution of humanity and the cosmos as spiritually evolving. And what came to me as I've been reflecting on this is that really redemption is that underlying quality of the whole universe where anything bad can work out ultimately and will work out ultimately to something good and wonderful. I don't mean to be so dualistic about bad and good, but gotta use.
Oh yeah, no, I would certainly say, if I look at my own experiences, that certainly there is the through line is that as kind of difficult or challenging as things may seem in the moment, or especially if I've had incidences professionally where I just felt like I really didn't measure up, or I really failed in some way. Just looking at, once I get a little perspective, looking at the end result of that, and how a lot of times it pushed me forward, and that there was ultimately a good outcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that leads me to my next question, which I think is works into this that we're talking about, is what does failure look like to you?
Failure to me looks like not getting up, not
Mm,
trying again, because everybody fails at something. I've never met a human being who was perfect at absolutely everything. I don't
mm,
expect ever to do so. Um, and so failure is really just a learning opportunity. What we call failure is just a learning opportunity to move on in a different direction, to learn more, to try again, to try a different way, to do something else, to keep trying, whatever it is, it's just a lesson. But if there is such a thing as true failure, it would be just completely giving up. I mean,
yeah.
ultimately, I believe that reality is redemptive, so nothing's ever going to be a complete dead end in my mind. So,
I love that. I am definitely, I love that. I love, um, I'd like to subscribe to your way of thinking. That sounds good.
thank you.
So when I'm thinking about creativity, when I'm thinking about, even my own failures or uncomfortable moments,
Mm,
um, I come back to this idea of curiosity.
mm.
And so I guess so really my next question for you is, how do you remain curious? Or, do you consider, is curiosity part of your practice, your being?
Uh, sort of having an internal argument over curiosity because I have so much natural curiosity about a lot of things, including nutrition, for instance, that may or may not be part of my ultimate path or contribution in life. And so it's like, I need to be curious about these things. More philosophy, less nutrition, maybe.
Okay, so it sounds like you have no problem remaining curious. You are in, that is a kind of, that is the water you swim in. Going back to our learning to swim metaphor. So being, maybe it sounds like you're curious about so many things, that it's practicing maybe discernment within this wide array of curiosity, curious and questioning thinking.
Yeah, it may be because of my childhood. We moved every 1 or 2 years. Most of the time I was growing up, I moved a total of 9 times growing up, and total of 4 different countries, 3 different states in the U.S., 2 different continents, and traveled on in Europe as well. So the universe, the whole world was just wide open and amazing to me, and nature in all these places was amazing. So and cultures were so vastly different, I think it was just natural to be curious. And I think
Mm.
in me, that's just increased in a lot of ways and with age. I mean, part of it is a choice of lifestyle not to be so utterly busy, tied down to a 9 to 5 kind of job that doesn't leave time for curiosity. And I think that's something important we need to learn, that what to ask ourselves, what do we give up by prioritizing certain things in our lives?
Well, and I think I'd be curious to get your thoughts on how spontaneity is related to curiosity, because what I'm finding, especially in this moment in time, with, you know, essentially sheltering in place, or at least limiting our daily goings outs and things like that, is that I find that spontaneous interactions in particular with other people are so limited, um, and and I don't know that I've quite figured it out in my own mind, but I love how spontaneity and curiosity play together.
Mm. So spontaneity is has been, at least I think, a big part of my nature. And I think of spontaneity as a spiritual quality. And for me, the balance has been needing to also cultivate that spiritual quality of self-discipline, because I, not having access to the world is like, no, let me get more access to the world on my phone. So
Ah, yeah.
there's a lot of spontaneity about, oh, I want to learn more about that. So that's good in some ways and not helpful when writing a paper, as I currently am. It's not as helpful. But there needs to be a balance. And really, there is a fullness to life, and each of us can find it in our own unique ways.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so next question is, what would you say is your secret, or maybe not so secret, to a meaningful life?
Wow. It would be one thing: believing that the divine infuses all of reality and each one of us, that the divine is who we are, the divine is what makes up reality, that the divine is where we all come from and where we're all headed, and the whole universe is growing in that beautiful loving consciousness of what the ultimate is. In the Vedanta tradition or the yoga philosophy tradition, it's called Satchitananda, which is truth being bliss,
Mm,
not meaning truth be is bliss, but truth
right.
and bliss. So one of my affirmations that sometimes comes to me, and today it's been coming to me very repetitively, is to keep using the affirmation. I think it's because I woke up to the smell of smoke and fires
Mm,
that this
you're
came
right.
to me. But is all is well. And if I
Mm.
may I share a personal story where that came
Yeah, yeah.
from? Great, I'd love to share the story. So the masters that I spoke of in my book, Mornings with the Masters, are various ascended masters, including Buddha and Jesus Christ and Lady Kuan Yin, Mother Mary, and others. And Buddha actually taught me that all is well is the fundamental dharma or dhamma. It's the original nature of reality, and the ultimate nature of reality is all is well. And what came to me in my understanding then is that if we believe in God per se, God is that state of being in which all is well. Another name for God is just consciousness, okay? Consciousness and energy. So when we can get into that consciousness energy state in which we just reverberate with that consciousness and energy, we harmonize with that consciousness and energy, all is well, then what's inside us manifests more beautifully outside us. When I get into that flow of all is well, oh dear God, amazing things happen, and the world becomes so much more beautiful. Not sure why I haven't been doing this every day, so this is a good renewal here. If it takes smoke in the morning to get me back to it, that's great. Redemptive quality of the
Hmm.
universe. But if we let go of attachment, sorrow, grief, desires, those sort of lower vibration forms of consciousness, if we let go of that, and letting go of fear, attachment, and desire, restore ourselves into that state of being and that consciousness of all as well, then life can just stay that way. We're the only ones who take ourselves out of it.
Oh,
We do.
isn't that the truth? So, well, okay, so the next question is, what is your best simple habit that or practice that you do every day? And we've just been talking about affirmations, so I wonder if that would be on the top of your list.
It would be at the top of my list. It's one practice related to Raja Yoga meditation. Raja Yoga meditation and Kriya Yoga meditation have been my mainstays for coming on 24 years now. But the universe taught me or developed something in me last year, and it's from a combination of sources, really. But what evolved in me is what I call singing Kriyas. And I actually posted a YouTube video called Singing Kriyas. And they're just joyful, and you can do it from any religious perspective or any non-religious perspective. You can use just basic affirmations. Like the most basic affirmation is just I am, which speaks to the divine essence in us all, and divine essence transcendent of the universe, divine essence in everything that is. And what I do is I sing a note on the scale, do, re, mi, fa, so, that scale, one for each chakra. And so it just goes like this. I am, I am, I am, I am. And the seventh one is for the crown chakra. And then the eighth one, that one is reaching to the transcendent divine. And then bring it back down. I am, I am, I am, I am. And end it in the root chakra. So we go up with the affirmation and we come down with the affirmation. And you can change the pitch to match what vibration you can feel in each of your chakras. It's a great way of clearing energy blockages from the chakras. It's a great way of harmonizing your whole being. It's a great way of choosing affirmations that you need for the day and energizing them with your whole being and into your whole being. It's a way of affirming the best and most positive qualities of life.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Your voice is much more lovely than I'm afraid mine would be, but I could do that if I were alone. Now, what would be one word for you to describe your professional journey?
Well, the first word that came to me is hope. I don't know why that was the word, but yeah.
Okay. And what would be a word to describe your life?
My life.
And this is one of those questions that I feel like can really be more of a reflection, or can also be more in the moment right now.
Well, the first reaction in me was to want it to be joy. And then my real reaction is just wow. Just wow to life. And if you knew all that had happened in my life, I am planning the autobiography, by the way.
Oh, good.
I need a few readers to start, give me feedback on the first, chapter or so. But yeah, it's just wow.
Well, I mean, to me, and we'll wait for the next interview around the book. But wow and joy are not, they're not opposites in any way. And really, again, what I'm hearing or what I'm really responding to is this deep awareness of kind of who you are, and also the bigger world around you, which is quite lovely.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. Well, so I'm always curious what people did as their first job, or what was the first task that you were paid for. And I mean, if going as far back as you can remember, what would that be?
Well, babysitting.
Mm-hmm.
It's awkward because for my last 2 years of high school, my parents and I, my older siblings had already graduated high school. But for my last 2 years of high school, my family and I moved back to the Democratic Republic of the Congo when it was Zaire. And I had actually started kindergarten at the American School of Kinshasa many years before. And then I got to graduate from the American School of Kinshasa.
Mm.
My life had been this whirlwind of traveling in between times, many different schools. And there was no way for me to get a summer job or any other job. And I wasn't even allowed to drive. I just learned to drive. And I wasn't even allowed to drive because it would not have been safe for me as a young
Mm-hmm.
female. I mean, I managed to learn to drive their little stick shift Fiat, sort of, anyway. Um, well, if I described where I had to practice, you'd understand. Um, and then it just, I mean, I had friends who were stopped by, gendarme at a roadblock, and the way they got out of it was that one of the guys gave his gold watch.
Mm.
So there was just no way my parents were going to let me drive anywhere. So it was challenging. But sorry, what am I supposed to be answering? I got all these.
Babysitting.
Babysitting. Oh, yeah. So the first job I got was actually tutoring a little kindergarten girl for 3 weeks after my junior year. I got to tutor, or maybe I think it was after my junior year, maybe after my senior year. I really was interested in child development and tutored this little girl. And she was very artistic, I remember, which was nice.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Okay, just pause for a second. I apologize. All my stuff was in the other room, so I've got to grab my power cord because I just realized I need to charge while we're doing this.
Okay.
Okie dokie. We were all recording, but I just don't want the computer to die. So you were saying that you tutored a young kindergarten, you were tutoring a kindergartner. And so I'm curious if you feel like that has informed anything that you do today, or has informed kind of the trajectory of your professional life in any way.
That's hard to say, but there has been a recurring theme of when I've worked with children, it has generally been very meaningful for me. One of the most meaningful things I've done was before moving to California to work on a PhD last year, I lived in the Washington, D.C. area in Maryland for 8 years. And in addition to seeing clients, I started substitute teaching. And I developed motivational speeches while substitute teaching because, kids don't want to behave for a sub, right? They don't want to do their work, whatever. It's hard to even get their attention nowadays. School is not what it used to be. Education does not seem to be what it used to be in many cases. So I developed these motivational speeches, and, for a long time I did it based on my childhood. And, it could be really short or it could be really long, depending on what I felt like I could get away with, depending on how much work they needed to get done.
Yeah.
And eventually I developed this talk about inner greatness because I was standing in a high school classroom where I'd taught the teenagers there in that school a lot. And I had some of the same kids who'd heard my motivational speech based on my childhood, like one of them, I think 4 or 5 times, and he never complained. Would actually get applause. If you can imagine a substitute teacher getting applause, I was so stunned about
Oh my gosh.
not generally from the whole class, but a little
Right.
flattering or whatever. But Anyway, so I was standing there and I was like, okay, God, what have we got? Because, some of these kids are not yet ready. So I found myself saying to these teenagers, I believe everyone has inner greatness. And in some of you, I'm seeing that inner greatness. And in some of you, I'm not yet seeing that inner greatness. But I believe everyone has inner greatness. What do you think I mean by inner greatness? And Kristan, this dialogue, where they'd say things and then I'd pull out my three or four top favorite forms of inner greatness, worked from high school down to kindergarten. And a 5-year-old boy raised his hand when I asked, what do you think I mean by inner greatness? And he said, listening. And I was like, yes, listening is one of my favorite forms of inner greatness, because it is so important, right? And then I would share my favorite forms. And one of the true joys of my life was getting to say to I don't know how many children, and I got to be with, when I would get to be with kids for more than a day, I would give out inner greatness awards for, work they'd get done, for being helpers, for whatever. And then when I get to be with kids longer, like first or second graders, I was asking them, so who showed inner greatness during recess or at lunch? And they'd start looking for inner greatness in each other. This was just such a joy. And then the peak was working with middle schoolers for 5 days and doing this with them and having them start telling each other, find your inner greatness, find your inner greatness, like goofing off.
Yeah.
Middle schoolers will do. And then one boy came in and said, so and so posted on Instagram, find your inner greatness. I thought, yay, they're getting it, they're getting it. And getting to do this and really help people see, especially kids, that they have resilience can be an inborn quality if we choose to seek it and find it and nurture it.
Yes.
We're not born just naturally giving up. It is an inborn quality, but we sometimes lose it because the world knocks it out of us. And so we can look within and find inner greatness and cultivate that, because kindness in you is just like kindness in me, is just like kindness in, your audience, our audience. And kindness is just kindness, and anyone can cultivate that. And my favorite form of inner greatness that I got to share with kids, if you can imagine the privilege of getting to share this with teenagers, was my favorite form of inner greatness is when someone walks into a room, because we were in a classroom setting, is when someone walks into a room and they don't just think about what they need and want, they think about what everyone else needs and wants. And I would tell them, that's the quality of being a leader. And right now, we really need leaders who don't just think about what they need and want. We need leaders who think about what everyone needs and wants. And I would say to them, you can be that kind of leader. You can be a leader. And Kristan, it would bring my heart so much joy to be able to share this message with thousands, billions of children or teenagers around the world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's incredibly powerful. And it is so, it's, I think probably in some ways it was maybe even more meaningful coming from you. As a substitute teacher, I'm thinking to myself, because, although you got to know them at a certain point, it was in some way you were this person coming from the outside and being able to see them so clearly for themselves, and affirming that. And so I can only imagine how powerful that moment has been for many people who you shared that with. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So if you were talking about inner greatness, I feel like it's so funny. I keep looking at the next question and thinking, gosh, Carole it's a very interesting phenomena of how our conversation is flowing and how the questions are flowing. So I feel like you've shared one of your talents. And my next question is, what is your in plain sight talent? Meaning, what is that talent that is pretty apparent to anyone who meets you? or who knows you for some length of time?
Well, I think writing is in
Yeah.
plain sight talent if you read my books, maybe. But
Well,
um,
and you've also received awards. So yeah, I would concur. So then conversely, or what would be more of a hidden talent, or not necessarily hidden, but one that takes uh, more time to reveal itself to others?
the intuitive knowing.
Mm.
Um, I seek to connect with higher consciousness, and all sorts of mystical things happen with clients. And I don't know how much you'd like me to talk about that, but I could share, a few examples if you like.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I've experienced miracles happening in and through me when doing energy healing. Like at a distance healing, a woman with liver cancer in the hospital, her pain reducing, getting out of the hospital sooner than expected. And with repeated distance healing, her blood levels of cancer dropping and going back to her singing career. Um, so she was getting better. Then she let a doctor give her an experimental drug, and that was that. So that was very unfortunate. But in the meantime, the healing was really, letting her live her life again without pain, and that was a huge gift. Um, but intuitive knowing at a distance, intuitive knowing in person, it's not about me. It's about the nature of this universe and how the universe is just consciousness and energy, and it's all interconnected and connected, and so we can know things. So I think the most fun story is I was giving distance healing to a 27-year-old woman I'd never met. Her mother had taken a meditation class with me, and her mother connected us. And this young woman had just moved and followed her boyfriend, and so her life had changed, and it was sort of up in the air, and she needed some reassurance. And as I was sending distance healing, I usually visualize white light because it contains all the colors, but I kept seeing rainbows, just rainbows of light inside her. And that was fun. And
Mm-hmm.
I was not sure what that was about. And I don't usually ask for blessings for a person at the end of distance healings, but I felt prompted to ask for a blessing for her at the end of the distance healing. So I got one. And when we talked after the distance healing, I shared the blessing with her, and I said, the blessing that I hear for you is there's a pot of gold at the end of your rainbow. And she said, did you just get that? And I was like, yes. Was that a trick question?
Right, right.
And she said 20 years before, when she was just 7 years old, her mother had been stressed about financial situations, and she had a dream one night in which she saw a rainbow inside their house with a pot of gold at the end. And she said, Mommy, Mommy, look, there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So the same message that the universe had given her in a dream when she was 7 years old, the universe somehow got into my head to give her 20 years later when she needed reassurance. How remarkable is that?
It is. It's yes. I mean, it is. Well, there's just, regardless of what you know what you believe or don't believe, I think that there's so much that we just, not all of us know about. And so yeah, I love moments like that. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
That's really fun. So this is definitely a pre-COVID question. Where is your next trip, and why? So you may or may not have something on the books, but is there a place that you'd like to be thinking of going?
So I left the East Coast a year ago, leaving my daughter and her then brand new baby. My son is 2-year-old and a baby on the way. Now I have 3 grandchildren under the age of 3, all on the East Coast. So where do you think I want to go?
Oh my goodness. Yes, 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 yes. Wow. Oh, yes. I definitely, I know that one. My dad had a surgery right before COVID, and so I was able to be with him for that, which I was so grateful. But I haven't seen him since. You know, I mean, we talk, but again, I don't know, you know, when that will happen. So I definitely understand that. Oh, so what is your, and you can include your birthday in this, but what is your favorite holiday that you love to celebrate?
Christmas. I mean, I was supposed to be a Christmas Carol. I came early. I came December
Okay.
1st. So I'm an Advent Carol, but Christmas. And last year, I mean, I went to Philadelphia to stay with my daughter and son-in-law and grandbaby, and I, I still had one paper I had to finish by midnight on Christmas Eve.
Oh my goodness.
I was, you know, I was just exhausted from working on papers and then traveling, and took a little nap and then went, you know, greeted everybody and then went back to working on the paper. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh, I only have to finish it by midnight Pacific time. This is going to be midnight East Coast time. So I went to a Christmas Eve service at a church around the corner. And just, you know, it was a delightful service.
Oh,
The most amazing Lord's Prayer where they prayed to our mother instead of our father, our mother. Everyone in the church prayed to our mother, which just brought me such joy. Not to undo the beauty of our father, but to add to it the beauty of our
right.
divine quality. And so it was just a delight. And then I went and finished my paper before midnight Pacific time.
Oh, very fun. I love that. The other question that I have is, do you have dreams where you fly?
I used to. Oh, I love flying in dreams. It's the coolest quality. I'm sure that we have that. I know that we have that ability in the astral realms because some of the work I do with my clients is with deceased loved ones on the other side. And that feeling of just astral floating, flying is just such a great feeling.
It is the best, for sure. So if, I guess the one thing that I would like to kind of, we're getting towards the end here, is what do you think when you look at your involvement in different organizations, or it could have been, you know, in the work that you do or working with others, I'm always curious, what is what's the one thing that you find most often gets in people's way when they are, you know, I'm thinking about some of the work that you do as a healer, and also as a life coach. So, I mean, where do you see people maybe getting in their own way the most, or is there something that you can speak to around that, where what would be something that you see most commonly when people are saying, gosh, I'm here, but I really want to be here?
Well, negative limiting self-beliefs. I also do hypnotherapy, but my my specialty in hypnotherapy is something called affect bridge hypnotherapy, which is designed. I do it to help to coach people how to heal their own inner wounded child, or to heal trauma. I mean, it doesn't have to be real trauma. A lot of us get this negative messaging when we're young, things like I'm not good enough, or you have to be the best, or whatever. I've found that often in people's shoulders, while my hands are placed there during an energy healing, I can ask, you know, what is this person's limiting self-belief or most negative limiting self-belief, and it'll come to me. And I mean, I trust the intuitions, and usually there's some confirmation. I even had a woman who came to me knowing she had a limiting self-belief, and knowing knowing back up a little bit. What she knew was that she had an emotional energy blockage that was keeping her from getting pregnant. She and her husband had an almost 4-year-old child, but they had been trying for 6 or 7 months to have a second child and weren't able to. So she knew she had an emotional energy blockage. And again, consciousness and energy are intertwined. They're inseparable, really. And I could explain that if you want me to at some point, or another time. And what came to me was that what she articulated as a negative limiting belief was, I'm not good enough, and that had patterns in other family members multi-generationally. And that it came to me that the inborn, the soul who was to come to them didn't want to be born into that consciousness. I'm not good enough. So she dedicatedly worked to clear that every which way we could. So through energy healing, I like to give the assignment of the Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian prayer. So she did that at least 15 minutes a day, all the different ways we could come up with to clear that energy as well with the Ho'oponopono. And the Ho'oponopono, if you don't know it, Hawaiian prayer is one of the most powerful tools in life. Literally.
I will have to look it up. I'm not familiar with it.
So she also did the affect bridge hypnotherapy, and the final healing I gave her, I said, I would work before with women helping them get pregnant. I said, I've never told anyone this, but I'm 100% sure that you're getting pregnant. The following Saturday, she texted me that she'd taken 2 pregnancy tests and she was pregnant.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so in summary, is there a question that you wish I had asked of you?
Yes. What do you mean by consciousness and energy?
Okay.
Thank you. So by the energy part, I mean subtle energy. So if you think about how a cell phone signal comes to us, and we don't question how it goes through the air, and in our cell phone, somehow I can hear either your voice or a different friend's voice, or my daughter's voice, right? We don't question how that signal vibrates through the air and sounds like different people's voices, right? So there's information flowing in the cell phone signal, right? And there's energy flowing in that signal, and it sounds like words or whatever, and it sounds like a person's voice. So the two are tied together, the information, which can also be understood as consciousness, and the energy, the sound. And then we all are familiar with subtle energy, generally, 99% of us, in my experience of talking with people about this, or asking people about this. And yet we even have a little bit of language for it. But in the West, we have not yet studied it as a science. We need to, and far greater people than I have said that. In the East, they have studied it. So you're already familiar with it, and here's how I'd like to show you you are. Have you ever been to a ball game, a large, sporting event at a stadium, an auditorium, and you felt the excitement in the air?
Yeah.
And we have that saying, felt the excitement in the air.
Right.
Many of us have had that experience, right? Or maybe for some people it was a musical event,
Right.
And that excitement energy is a subtle energy vibration that carries a message to it, and we're all intuitively programmed to pick it up through our auras, through our chakra system, and so forth. And nobody has to explain, hey, you know what you're feeling in the air? That's excitement. Nobody has to explain it. We're all built to get it, And then have you ever been in a room where people started getting tense and argumentative with each other, and you could feel the tension in the air?
Oh, for sure.
We have that saying, the tension in the air. We even have the old saying, the tension in the air was so thick you could cut it with a knife.
Right.
Well, so many of us have had that experience. And tension is a different form of subtle energy with a different wavelength to it, different message that it carries, and we're all intuitively programmed to pick it up. So nobody has to explain, hey, Kristan, you know what? This is not excitement. This is tension. So watch what you say. Nobody has to explain that, right? And then have you ever been physically in close proximity with a person who was either so angry or so anxious you could literally feel the anger or the anxiety coming off of them?
Yeah.
And nobody had to say, watch out, because this person's about to blow or whatever, because you feel it and you knew it. And then I hope and trust that you have felt the energy of love from someone and with someone and felt safe in that energy of love. Totally different vibration patterns carries a message with it, just like the cell phone message comes through the air. That's what I mean.
I am so glad that we asked this question.
Good.
Seriously, that's a wonderful, thank you. That's a wonderful way to end at least this chapter of our conversation. I thank you so much for all that you shared. I feel like there are just so many bits of information that I'm excited to pursue and think about even more deeply. And I will make sure that there is information for folks who want to follow up with you. Your books, links to your books and other goodies. And again, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you, Kristan. It's my pleasure. Lots of fun. Thank you.
Our goal is to inspire others and share stories to find meaning in your daily life. Let go of the traditional norms and be yourself at home, work, and beyond. The awareness of bright spots and blind spots is a performance enhancing tool that you can apply to your life and to your organization today.